This isn't just a story, it's a warning. What was supposed to be the most daring cash-in-transit robbery in the country's history turned into a violent disaster that no one saw coming. 18 gang members with military-grade and getaway cars had everything planned. But in a dusty corner of Limpopo, their operation was crushed before it even began. This wasn't luck. It was the result of months of silent tracking, surveillance, and a shootout that ended in the kind of shed normally seen in zones. The failed heist didn't just shock the nation, it exposed a dark criminal underworld hiding in plain sight. From luxury cars and rifles to whispers of police corruption, this case revealed how deep organized crime has dug into South Africa's streets, and how close the country came to facing its most devastating cash robbery ever. It was meant to be the perfect crime, carefully planned, militarily executed, and aimed at millions in cash. But something went terribly wrong. Instead of escaping with a fortune, the gang ended up in the worst place they could ever be. For years, South Africa has battled a growing crisis. Cash-in-transit robberies happening in broad daylight. Heavily gangs have turned armored vans into moving targets, knowing each van carries millions. These attacks aren't sloppy. They're fast, brutal, and well-coordinated. Criminals use explosives to vans open and escape before police can react. The violence is rising, and each hit leaves the public more afraid and law enforcement more desperate. These gangs didn't start this way. Many began with petty theft or hijackings, but quickly learned that armored van hits offered bigger rewards. Over time, they got smarter, forming networks and studying law enforcement patterns. They collected military-style and trained their teams like soldiers. They didn't just rob, they planned missions, assigned roles, and practiced escape routes. The Limpopo gang was unlike anything the police had seen. At first, they were shadows, striking without a trace and vanishing before backup arrived. But soon, patterns emerged. Same style, same vehicles, same brutal speed. They hit vans on highways, rural roads, even near police stations. Each time, they used fast cars and automatic rifles, showing a level of control that made even experienced officers nervous. The gang was feared across 3 provinces, with whispers of their names spreading from Limpopo to Gauteng. They didn't leave behind fingerprints or witnesses, only wrecked vans and scorched roads. Police began linking robberies and found similarities in the getaway cars, modified for speed, fitted with hidden compartments. Their firepower was extreme, with rifles capable of through armor. These weren't street thugs. They were trained, organized, and dangerous. Their attacks followed a chilling routine. First, they'd block the van using a stolen truck. Then, they'd detonate explosives to rip it open and snatch the cash. The entire job would last under 3 minutes. Every hit was clean and precise, until one mistake changed everything. Police began to track their vehicles using satellite images and toll booth footage. Slowly, the gang's cover started to slip. Law enforcement was under massive pressure. People were losing trust and officials demanded results. The media ran stories of gangs outsmarting police, making them look weak. Officers worked overtime, digging into every lead, desperate to get ahead. It became clear that the Limpopo gang was planning something bigger than ever before. Surveillance picked up movement around Makado, a town in Limpopo province. Informants warned police that the gang was preparing for their largest hit yet. Phones went quiet. Money was being moved. Cars were being modified again. Intelligence agents confirmed that dozens of gang members had gathered at a hideout in the bush, far from main roads. The hideout was quiet but heavily guarded. From the sky, drones spotted strange activity. Men carrying long bags, moving with purpose. Trucks and SUVs came and went at odd hours. Every sign pointed to a final mission being planned. Police knew they couldn't wait. If they did, millions could vanish and lives could be lost. For weeks, officers watched from a distance. They recorded license plates, tracked deliveries, and followed people connected to the hideout. As the pieces came together, police learned the gang was days away from targeting a security convoy. This hit would be their boldest yet. 30 million rands, moving through a rural route, lightly guarded. The pressure to stop them built by the hour. Officers gathered in secret, studying maps, planning entry routes, and deciding how to strike. Orders came from the top: move in fast, take them alive if possible, but stop the heist no matter the cost. The mission was clear: end the gang's reign, before another armored van fell. Police knew the gang wouldn't go down easily. They had faced these men before and seen what they were capable of. But this time, they had the advantage. Surprise. The trap was set. All they needed was the right moment to close in and bring an end to the most dangerous syndicate South Africa had ever faced. The operation was codenamed Desert Storm. It was planned in silence, under the radar, and with one goal: shut down the gang before they struck again. The plan came straight from the top, involving national police, local officers, and the elite Hawks unit. Every detail was covered, from entry points to escape paths. It wasn't just another bust. It was the last chance to break a syndicate. Multiple agencies worked together like clockwork. Each group had a role, each officer a target. The Hawks brought intelligence muscle, while local police provided ground knowledge. The National Commissioner's team oversaw the mission, ensuring that no misstep would cost lives. Their aim wasn't to they wanted the leaders alive. Taking the gang alive would mean information. Who were they working with? Where did they get their cars? How wide did this network go? But no one underestimated the danger. This wasn't a group that surrendered. They fired first and thought later. The location they targeted was a remote warehouse outside Makado. It was surrounded by brush, unpaved roads, and nothing but open land for miles. The gang chose the spot because it gave them freedom. No eyes, no police, no traffic. It was perfect for hiding, training, and planning hits. It was also a nightmare for law enforcement to enter without being seen. The area had multiple exits, making it easy for suspects to escape if things went wrong. Trees and thick grass gave them cover. That's what made it dangerous. Every bush could hide a gunman. The gang felt safe there, confident no one would find them. But they didn't know they were already being watched. In the early hours before sunrise, police teams moved into place. Drones hovered above, feeding live footage to commanders. Officers wore camouflage, helmets, and bulletproof vests. They were told to wait for the signal. The final briefing made one thing clear: catch them alive if you can, but don't hesitate to protect yourself. They watched as gang members moved around the property, unaware of what was coming. The suspects were loading black bags into vehicles. Some were others on radios. The aerial feed showed more than a dozen people, many of them holding rifles. Police had to act fast. Any delay could mean a escape or a trap. Then it happened. As officers moved to breach the outer fence, someone on the inside saw them. Rang out, then chaos. The suspects opened fire, spraying bullets in every direction. In seconds, the calm was gone, replaced by smoke, fire, and shouting. The officers returned fire, not retreating, but pushing forward. Automatic lit up the sky. Windows shattered, tires burst, and dirt flew as the ground shook with each. For 7 long minutes, the rural warehouse became a battlefield. Officers ducked behind cars while bullets tore through metal and trees. One officer was hit, thrown to the ground. He was dragged to safety by a teammate, barely alive. The others pressed forward, breaking through the perimeter. Room by room, corner by corner, they cleared the area. The smell of powder filled the air. When it was over, silence returned to the land. Bodies lay across the ground. 16 men, 2 women. Their scattered, their escape cars riddled with bullets. What was meant to be the start of a R1 million robbery had ended in failure. Out of the suspects who had been there, only 4 made it out alive. Those 4 fled in a stolen vehicle, speeding down a dirt road. But roadblocks were already in place, and officers were waiting. They were caught hours later at a second hideout outside town, tired, wounded, and silent. The mission had succeeded, but the cost was clear. 18 lives lost, and 1 officer forever changed. This wasn't just a shootout. It was a turning point. For years, the gang had spread fear through fear and firepower, but now their silence would speak louder. The survivors would tell their story, and the rest, they left behind the wreckage of a failed heist and a warning to those who thought they were untouchable. After the fire stopped, what police found was terrifying. In one dark corner of the warehouse, they uncovered a pile of 7 powerful automatic rifles. These were not ordinary. They were designed to punch through armored vans. Each rifle was loaded, ready, and some were still warm. Investigators would later confirm that these same rifles had been used in earlier robberies. Beside the were tactical vests, night vision goggles, and military-style uniforms. The suspects had dressed for not crime. Radio sets and encrypted phones were still switched on mid-communication. Everything about this gang pointed to planning, training, and control. They weren't wild criminals. They were a mobile army with one mission: to steal and survive. Outside, officers were stunned by what sat under tarps and behind crates. A total of 10 cars had been prepared for a fast exit. The engines were still warm, fuel tanks full. These weren't normal street cars. Each vehicle was a beast, modified for speed, impact, and escape through back roads. Among the vehicles were BMW M-Series models and Mercedes AMG coupes. One Ford Ranger had panels that could stop bullets. Tires were reinforced, windows were tinted, and all license plates were fake or stolen. These cars had been built for more than a getaway. They were moving fortresses, silent until activated. Police began tracing the car origins and found a web of fake registrations. Many were stolen from nearby provinces, retagged and cleaned for missions. Every car had a specific job: lead, follow, block, or decoy. It was a dance of machines run by men who knew how to vanish. But this time, they ran out of road. Digging deeper into the suspect's lifestyle, police uncovered another layer: money. It wasn't just stashed in bags or hidden under floors. The gang had turned past heist profits into real investments. They had bought stores, nightclubs, and front companies to clean dirty money. Investigators followed the trail and found cryptocurrency wallets linked to foreign exchanges. The money moved fast, often across borders, then came back clean. This allowed them to buy, pay informants, and stay ahead of the law. Every robbery funded the next one, turning violence into a business model. The gang also lived large. Police found designer clothing, expensive watches, and luxury electronics inside the hideout. Laptops and mobile devices showed searches for getaway routes and bank transfers. Photos revealed suspects partying in private villas, drinking imported and traveling first class. Their greed had no ceiling. Properties in 3 provinces were linked to the gang. Some were rentals, others outright purchases under fake names. One house had an underground bunker, fully stocked with food, water, and backup gear. It was clear they had no plans to be caught, but their confidence had blinded them. As police examined the bodies, each told a different story. The youngest was just 19, his ID found in a stolen jacket. Others were in their 40s, showing signs of past injuries, bullet scars, and hardened hands. Some had military tattoos, and a few had records from previous violent crimes. One man had only been out of prison for 2 months. 2 of were women. Unlike the rest, they weren't when found. Investigators believed they were handling logistics, radio communication, food supplies, and surveillance footage. Their roles were quiet but critical. Without them, the machine would stall. Interviews with the captured suspects finally gave answers. One man broke down within hours. He admitted they were planning a huge strike, 30 million rands in one hit. The target was a cash convoy scheduled to leave a depot that coming Friday. They had already studied the route, bought uniforms, and timed the police patrol gaps. Another suspect confirmed the gang had inside help. A corrupt security guard had leaked the convoy's movements. That's why they were rushing before the information changed. All cars and team members had been prepared. The only thing they didn't plan for was being caught first. As the interrogation ended, police realized how close they had come to disaster. Had they waited another day, the convoy would have rolled straight into an ambush. 18 suspects were but the threat wasn't gone. More people were involved, and somewhere, another gang was watching, learning, and waiting. The sun had barely risen when news broke. Across South Africa, TV stations aired non-stop footage: bullet holes in windshields, twisted car doors, and pools of dried. The images were raw, shocking, and impossible to ignore. 18 in Limpopo out flashed across every screen. It was no longer just a police raid. It had become a national story. Helicopters flew over the scene, capturing the chaos left behind. On social media, people shared photos of the wreckage and the. Some posted theories about who the gang really worked for. Others zoomed in on license plates, clothes, and equipment, looking for signs of corruption. The shootout turned into a public investigation, driven by fear, anger, and curiosity. Within hours, the story reached international headlines. Foreign news outlets asked how such a large criminal network had gone unchecked. Experts compared the Limpopo gang to cartels in Mexico or bank robbers in Brazil. For South Africans, it felt like fiction had come to life, except the was real. Public reaction came in waves. Some praised the police for taking bold action and removing dangerous people from the streets. Others were disturbed by the scale of the violence. The idea that 18 suspects were in one raid raised questions about police methods. Were they forced to, Or did something go wrong? The debate split communities and filled radio talk shows for days. In towns near the raid site, fear lingered. Families of the suspects gathered outside police stations, crying for justice. One mother called it a massacre. She said her son had been trying to turn his life around. Meanwhile, survivors of past heists cheered. They called the suspects cowards, hiding behind rifles. Police statements didn't soften the message. The National Commissioner said the officers acted with bravery and precision. He said the gang was well-armed and dangerous, and that officers did what they had to. He praised the coordination between local police, special units, and national intelligence. This is what happens, he said, when we strike first. Government officials quickly followed. The Minister of Police promised stronger laws to stop cash-in-transit heists. He said the time for soft words was over. Parliament held a session to discuss armored truck safety, GPS tracking, and faster response times. Pressure grew for private security companies to work better with law enforcement. The Hawks, the elite crime-fighting unit, received immediate funding. They were given new tools, surveillance gear, and greater authority to raid suspected hideouts. The Limpopo shootout proved that waiting was too risky. Now, the hunt for other gangs would go faster and harder. It was clear the game had changed. In the days after the raid, something strange happened. For the first time in months, armored vans moved without attack. Reports showed a sharp drop in attempted heists. Some gangs vanished, leaving their safe houses and switching phones. Police believed they were regrouping, shaken by how fast the Limpopo gang fell. Intelligence teams scanned intercepted calls and texts. New names emerged, new targets surfaced. The gang's seized phones became tools for tracing supply chains, money, and vehicles. The clock was ticking, and police wanted to strike before anyone else got bold again. They knew this quiet wouldn't last forever. Experts began comparing this raid to past heists. Some called it the largest gang takedown in South African crime history. No other single event had ended with so many suspects dead. The weapons found, the cars recovered, the money trails, all pointed to a criminal empire, not a street crew. It was a level of organization that even seasoned cops hadn't seen before. Still, not everyone saw it as a victory. Some crime analysts warned that so many suspects left gaps. Without key players to interrogate, parts of the network might remain hidden. Others feared retaliation from gangs in Johannesburg or Durban. Violence, they said, often breeds more violence. But the government pushed one message. This was a turning point, a show of force that would ripple through the criminal underworld. The lesson was simple. If you plan a heist, be ready to face the full weight of the law. Whether that stops future gangs or fuels their fire, only time will tell. But South Africa had changed, and everyone knew it. The Limpopo shootout left more than bodies behind. It raised questions no one could fully answer. If the gang wanted to escape, why did they first? Was it desperation, or had they been cornered too early? Or was something bigger at play, something we weren't told? Some believe the raid was compromised before it began. There are whispers that someone inside law enforcement tipped off the gang. The timing was too perfect, the response too aggressive. Suspicion grew that not everyone on the side of the law was clean. Investigators began checking call logs and command movements in the hours before the raid. Deeper cracks started to show. A few officers, once assigned to older heist cases, suddenly requested transfers. Reports of missing confiscated cash surfaced. Equipment from past arrests had vanished without explanation. It was no longer just about the gang, it was about who might have protected them. Trust in the system began to shake. Rumors spread like smoke. Some officers had warned their own units not to trust outside reinforcements. Others claimed the gang had paid for silence in the past. The line between police and criminal blurred, and it wasn't the first time. A few quiet probes were launched, away from public eyes. What they find might never reach the headlines. One captured suspect gave chilling testimony. He claimed they were bait, set up by a rival gang or someone in power. He said the real bosses never showed up to the farmhouse. Only the foot soldiers died that day. His words echoed in the interrogation room, then vanished from the official report. Another survivor told a similar story. According to him, the operation was meant to fail. He said those who planned it from the top never planned to be caught. His hands trembled as he spoke. He wasn't afraid of prison. He was afraid of the people still out there, the ones who pulled the strings from the shadows. Criminal psychologists studied the group's patterns. They didn't behave like common thugs. They were disciplined, well-trained, and moved with military precision. This wasn't a gang, it was a cartel in disguise. They recruited from places where hope was gone and promised money, status, and loyalty. Many came from villages with no jobs, no schools, and no options. Others were ex-soldiers, trained to but thrown away after war. Some were former cops, angry and bitter after being forced out. Together, they formed a force built on resentment and survival. They didn't rob for thrill, they robbed to win. The weapons told part of the story, but the minds behind the told the rest. These were people who knew how to disappear. They used fake names, multiple safe houses, and coded messages. They studied police tactics. They expected violence, but they didn't expect betrayal. For the police, the Limpopo shootout was their boldest success. It showed what could happen when forces worked together. It shook the underworld. It gave them momentum, but it also exposed weaknesses. For the criminals, it was a wake-up call. The game had changed. The law was no longer playing defense. But so long as masterminds remain untouched, new gangs will rise. They always do. For the people watching at home, it was a nightmare made real. Bullets in the bush, smoke in the morning sky, families torn apart in seconds, and a reminder that crime in South Africa is no longer in the shadows. It's in the headlines, the streets, and the lives of ordinary citizens. The shootout didn't just end one heist. It exposed an entire world hidden beneath the surface. Where loyalty is bought, silence is deadly, and justice moves slowly. The story didn't end with the fire. It only started. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next one.